Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast and episode 107. I know. I don't know how to stop that. Where just it's like a smooth transition. So there's nothing smooth about me. Well, my skin's smooth, but let's just jump right into our guest. All right, guys, back again. So our next guest is one kind of came out of left field for me because it's the husband of our last guest. And I've been able to do this 2 or 3 times, and it really works out. But a lot of times it's been different situations. Like one's a caregiver, and the other one is the one that goes through the disability. But in this case, they actually have 2 different stories, but they met up, and both their stories are impactful just in different ways. And I got to talk to him a little bit, get to know him, and what she already told about him, I already knew I wanted to have him on. So do you want to, introduce yourself and obviously say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Justin Sexton. 36. I was born with cerebral palsy, 1985, and I spent the first 3 months of my life in an incubator. My parents came and visited me every day, and I kind of lived a regular life for the most part. I just kind of playing sports and recreationally and, kind of doing certain kids things. Couldn't do things like ride a bike or whatnot. But now I live up in North Georgia in Dahlonega and married to my wife, Juliet, who's awesome and does cool riding. And then I play disc golf and make music and have a bunch of animals.
Cool. Yeah, she told me about a bunch of your animals. Yeah, I know you're trying to also get another one too. So we kind of talked about it a little bit off air, and I've asked this question to a lot of people like us. When was the first time you actually realized that you were different?
Probably about 3 or 4 for sure. Having to wear braces on my legs and stuff, and no other kids had to do that, and I hated it. I actually could talk before I could walk. I didn't walk till about almost 2, I think is what I heard. So I was definitely talked pretty early. So by the time I was 3, I have vague memories of having to wear braces on my legs and just not wanting to do it. Right off the bat, just kind of having to do that, and no other kid around me was having to do that. I remember going to this group of kids when I was probably about 3 years old, and it was kind of just kids with all sorts of disability or illnesses and stuff. And I remember kind of that vague memories, very, very vague memories of that being this is kind of a, interesting kind of group memory of being a kid. But by the time I really got to 5 years old, that's when I really, kindergarten, really preschool. I remember in preschool I remember I got pushed by a girl who was 6, probably 4, and she pushed me off the slide, and I cut my left hand, which is my dominant hand, pretty badly, and it was wrapped, and I couldn't use it. I remember not being able to do any learning to do handwriting in preschool, and I couldn't even do anything because my right hand was not great, and not being able to use my left hand. So those are memories that I have right after that of kind of definitely being different. And then once I got to the point of having to learn to ride a bike, and that was something that I just don't have any control of my right ankle, and I don't have very good balance. It was just a brutal process of trying to learn that for a while. And, kind of once you get going to school, you really start noticing it more. So,
right.
Yeah, I would definitely say by 3 to 5 is when I really noticed.
Okay. Yeah. Cause I wanted to kind of ask you about how it affects you on a daily basis, because, some of these conditions, especially chronic illnesses or certain ones, they all kind of get pushed in together. And I know some people probably think cerebral palsy, and autism and Down syndrome, a lot of them are similar, because there's so many different variations of cerebral palsy where there are people that are more highly functional mentally, like you are, where some really need someone to take care of them.
Yeah, absolutely. They're in a wheelchair. They can't really communicate. It's just it's the snowflake idea. Everybody with CP really is different. There's no I've met people with CP that are just as functional and active and drive like I do. But they're more built and like I have really, the size difference. Like my left arm is noticeably almost 4 times bigger than my right arm.
Okay.
So like, I have a lot of that imbalance and strain on my body.
Right.
Where some people have CP and, the size is the same, might be slightly off, the arm or whatever, maybe just their leg is a little bit. And then, obviously being in a wheelchair, not being able to speak or, what. So it's definitely different for everybody.
Yeah. Does that kind of go into what you were talking about earlier about like, you said off mic about like the competition where people are trying to like say what is worse, even though you all kind of struggle in different ways, but obviously there is some variations of cerebral palsy that are worse than others.
Much worse. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. People who are, that can't even speak or whatever, it definitely, however, got them, in the brain. I had a stroke in the womb, and so I had to be, they had to, get me out of there fast. So that's why I was born premature. But yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate, they told my parents, they basically handed me over and were like, he might walk, you might have to take care of him, he might not be able to feed himself, but, see what happens. Here you go.
Good luck.
And so they really never knew and what was, and I think once I kind of got the regular life of just going to school, I wasn't in special ed classes and I went, I obviously had immense anger and had to go to therapy. They wanted me in therapy at a very young age. Because of just being really angry and fighting at school and, all that type of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't really, and that, because I'm sure that probably was like an identity thing for you, because you're put in these special classes, but you can talk and you can think and you have you just have certain other mobility problems and whatever else. And, because someone said to me once was like, well, you asked some questions that seem like most people wouldn't ask. And it's like, look, I have a feel for this shit because I've been in the worst places and I'm not afraid to ask any question because so many of us have gone through so much and there's such a lead up to how we get to where we are now. And a lot of times we're in so much pain and we just, take it out on others or we just don't, especially when we're in that, how young you were talking about, like we're just in a place where there's a lot of just built up resentment and anger because you don't really know where you belong and because you're only going by where your parents put you or where the school system puts you. So, but you probably have better and higher expectations for yourself. You want to be with the regular kids and you're put here, but I mean, what kind of conflict was like that for you at that point?
They never put me in any special ed. I was regular school. So yeah, right off the bat, they definitely were probably thinking about it, but because I was pretty confident and like an in your face kid, like even despite having CP, like I was still really kind of a loud, talkative kid, and had a lot of energy, and it was almost like this bipolar at a very young age. Of like when things were kind of going good, I was just like really happy, but the minute someone was picking on me or it kind of it came up so much, or just being picked on, not being the strongest kid, I definitely would get, really, really, angry and pissed off. And, my parents were not very understanding. They have guilt. I think a lot of parents have guilt. They don't want to see their kid go through stuff, right. But they weren't the best at figuring out how to, like, kind of just maybe let shit slide sometimes because you're maybe dealing with a lot of stuff that they don't even understand.
Yeah.
So that was hard. I felt like I didn't have my friends, honestly, sometimes were, I had certain friends that were really understanding at a really young age. And I look back now and I realize how grateful I was to have friends that, were just knew that I was definitely struggling and were, there for me when I didn't have parents, that I felt like I could talk to sometimes.
Yeah. It's like when you have
they definitely made their effort, but
it's like when you have something so noticeable, you're trying very hard for people not to draw attention away from it. It's like, look over there.
Yeah.
So, maybe how you were acting out in just certain ways. Because for me, like, especially when I was in high school, I mean, I was really where I was trying to kind of figure things out. And because I had, a lot of my childhood was taken from me because I was always sick and in the hospital. And so we had these machines called CCTVs and it's where you put stuff under. It's like a small TV, but it's sitting on like a little shelf type thing. And there's like a little slider underneath, and you put paper or anything that you're reading, you put it underneath, and it blows it up, and you could change the colors and all that. And the one thing that kind of drew attention away from me was, even though, because I hated it because it was in the front of the class, because it can only fit in certain places. So I had to basically sit in front of the class, not that far from the teacher, and I'm reading everything they're reading on this TV, so people can just look what I'm doing. But the one thing that was kind of cool is people thought it was cool, so they would put their hand underneath and they would go, oh, look at this. But I hated the attention so bad, because like I'm trying to just get through high school. That's already miserable for any kid. You can have just some shitty last name, but for me, it's like I'm in front of the class and it's like, look, there's the blind kid up there, and it's like, oh, like please just don't pay attention to me. And so I tried very hard a lot of times just to, do stupid shit. Even though I had good grades, I would act out and do some. Someone said, hey, like, do you like this song? And if I said, oh, they didn't like it, and I go, no, that song sucks. Meanwhile, at the time, it would be on my iPod because I didn't care. I just wanted to make friends and just kind of make sure people didn't notice my vision problem, that I just wanted to fit in as best as I could.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely know what that was like. Being a kid, it was definitely the toughest of times, and sometimes it would get better, and like it kind of got a little bit easier for me, like my last couple of years of high school, because I had good friends and stuff. But like dating and things like that, and like was just created a lot of anxiety and stuff like that, I remember. And by the time I was definitely 20-ish, I wasn't comfortable by any means, but I was definitely dating and things like that. I was able to take that step of that. But yeah, I think the certain anxiety in certain situations, weight training class really in high school was probably the hardest thing for me. We had to take weight training, and I tried to, my mom, write a letter or whatever and get me out of it, and I couldn't. Mm-hmm. And, it was embarrassing to be like the weakest person in the class. Like it was obvious that I was, the weakest person. And then we all had to do bench press in front of each other and push ups. I remember people laughing at my hand, and that would set me off, when we'd go home, and it would just do about it for days or whatever. And, it got a little bit better. And then trying to get a job, I think going out and applying for jobs was really one of the hardest things. And I didn't anticipate that. Yeah. So that kind of put me in a dark place, I think probably in my 20s, because I didn't, I didn't go to college. I went briefly, but, it wasn't something I wanted to do. I wanted to be out there kind of just working and out of my parents' house, and getting a job turned to be a lot, harder. I spent nights definitely sleeping on the street because I had nowhere to go. I didn't have a good relationship with my parents. Getting a job was fucking embarrassing sometimes. Like I remember going in for a job, and the guy was like, can you even sweep a broom? Like take this broom and sweep this floor in front of me. And I was like, dude, I could sweep a broom, man. Like, yeah. And I did it in front of him, and I still didn't get the job, and it was embarrassing. And
your wife told that story. I told her a story about where I had a similar thing where I had to go to this call center, and I told them I couldn't see the stuff on the computer because they refused to put the magnifier on it. And so she said, well, let's go back to my office. And she basically just made me read in front of her. It's like, can you read? And it's like, I can fucking read. I graduated high school on top of my class. Like, what are we doing here? And yeah, it's one of those where you, like, no matter how old you get and mature you get, like there's times where you're put in these positions where it just strips every bit of your confidence, and you're emotionally just naked, and you just feel like shit.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted your story.
No, you didn't know. It was kind of maybe, that was all these different things you don't really think about. I'm dealing with stuff right now that I didn't think I'd ever deal with. It didn't really cross my mind that, the older I got, the balance in my body, one side overcompensating for the other is going to become a struggle and create a lot of pain. And,
yeah,
I have to take a lot of supplements basically to try to get through the day, sometimes magnesium, and, making sure I'm stretching and moving around constantly and doing anything that I can to make sure I'm not, in a lot of lot of physical pain. And that's not something no one told me that, or, I went to physical therapy as a kid, and they were kind of mean and not really understanding and wanting me to waste my time doing fine motor skills, which I was never going to be able to do, instead of like actual physical motion that would have got my body moving and my arm moving, and would have been better than picking up pennies that I could barely even do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, you're constantly, when it comes to stuff like that, you're constantly put in positions where your limitations are highlighted so much, and it's a constantly just reminder of like, yeah, okay, remember, you suck. You can't do anything, remember? Whereas like if you were put in certain positions where that wasn't highlighted, and there's many ways you can do it, and a lot of these jobs, like if they were just to accept you and just say, okay, how can we accommodate you? There's ways of doing it, but they're just like, they'll say something nice that doesn't seem offensive or discriminatory, and then you're on your way. They'll say like, wow, you're very inspiring that you're trying to do this, and I love what you're trying to do, and blah, blah, we'll call you later. And
got that a lot.
Yeah. And that's one of the problems, like a lot of people with disabilities don't talk about enough, is especially trying to get jobs or things like that, or even if you have a job, because it's really easy to kind of say like, oh, that's racist or that's whatever. But when it comes to people with disabilities, some of it is so like, it doesn't seem offensive to others because they don't know what it's like to be us, and they don't know what like our triggers are. But like, I'm sure you've dealt with this, because I don't know anybody with a disability that hasn't. We've all been perceived to be slow in one way, shape, or form. And it doesn't matter what your disability is. It doesn't matter how smart you are, what your intellect is. You're perceived to be slow just based on whatever it is that you're lacking that they don't.
Exactly.
And so,
that's definitely true.
But you can't really prove that unless they come out and say, hey, are you retarded, or something that's really offensive. They'll do it in a way. And I think I've said this story before. I was working at this factory, and this woman comes up to me and says, hey, and she just wanted to borrow the tape. And I said, okay, hey, here you go. And she says, did you ever work at Hope? And now there's this place in town that hires people with special needs. It's actually a really nice organization. And she said, have you ever worked at Hope? And I said, no. And I said, but why would you ask me that? And she goes, oh, no reason. My husband worked there. And she walked away. Now, she was essentially asking me, because I have a visually impaired, because I have a disability, I should be working with kids with special needs. I should be working right alongside them. But I can't. So when I went to HR and talked about it, I'm not that guy. I don't really, but it pissed me off so much that I knew I was probably going to lose my job if I let it linger and fester enough in my head. And they were just like, well, I understand what you're trying to say. It went nowhere because it sounded like she was just trying to be friendly, even though she was completely being an asshole.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely super, super common.
Yeah, and you can't prove it because even though you and I know what she was trying to say, you can't prove that was her intent and that was what she meant to say. But it's like there's no other reason you would ask me that, and then your retort is, well, just because my husband used to work there. It's like, yeah, unless there was the one odd day that you saw me walk in the building when you were picking your husband up, and I was going for a job or whatever. Why would you ever ask me that question? But again, you tell HR that, it's like, oh, but now you're kind of trying to fish for something. It's like, no, I know what she was trying to say to me. And if I would have blasted her, like screamed at her, I would have been the one in trouble. And that's, like I said, being someone with a disability, it's very hard to combat people who are, because they're never going to be straightforward and ignorant and just like, oh, why is your arm so short? Or why do you walk so funny? Or why are you whatever? Because that they know that'll get them in trouble. So they can go many subliminal ways around it and just ask us a very offensive question that doesn't seem offensive on the surface.
Definitely.
Yeah. And so I trust me, I feel your pain. It's like someone with a disability trying to go out in the job market it's embarrassing. It really is, because not all of them, but most of them, because you're constantly having to try to prove yourself in ways that other people wouldn't. And what people don't know about people with disabilities is like, if you gave us a job and you showed us like some sort of loyalty and like you really want to try for us, we're great employees. We're gonna while you're paying people $20 an hour to sit on their ass and half-ass it, and they'll quit tomorrow because they don't care about what you do for them. we will bust our ass for you because you gave us a shot.
Yeah, it was definitely hard getting to good jobs. And every time I got a job, it was definitely, I was grateful to be like, okay, cool. Especially like I used to wish, I wish my left hand was, the hand I had issues with, because the first thing you did at any job interview was shake someone's hand, which for me was like, it was just the absolute worst thing. As soon as I went to shake someone's hand, it was a nightmare. Right. And it was just like, oh. So right off the bat, I just met you, and you have to deal with that. Most people probably right off the bat, they're like, right in your face. Here we go. Okay, so
yeah, people.
Why are you not like me?
Yeah, people will try to show me stuff like really close. It's like, dude, don't do that to me, because I will slap the shit out of you. Like, don't do that to me. And then it's like, well, it's right. I'm on because I have another job. It's like, I'm on work, so I have to or I'm on duty, so I have to try to get along with people, and it's like, and that's like what you were talking about earlier with all the anger. Like, it festers even as an adult, because now I'm older. I'm in a place where I know who I am, and I just don't take anyone's shit. And I'm not trying to be a dick to anybody. I genuinely will treat anybody the same. I will treat everyone the same. I don't care about what your ailment is or what your color or any of that shit. That means nothing to me. But you're gonna treat me differently. Like, I'm just gonna be an asshole to you. Like, I don't care. Like, fuck off, because I'm not taking that. I'm 33. I'm tired of feeling guilty for my eyes, or I'm tired of feeling like I'm ugly or I don't belong in this society, even though the world kind of makes it clear that I don't. I don't give a shit. I'm gonna try anyway.
Yeah, I like that. That's definitely the point I've come to, and it's new. It's over the last few years. I think I've really finally come to the appreciative gratitude sort of state of like, hey, it could be a lot worse, and I'm grateful for the things that I can do every day. I have things that I love to do. I have a wife that I love, and I have a lot going on. Yesterday was a tough day for me for locking my keys in the car, which was a result of not really having my hands full, but for me it's just a habit to not hold things in my right hand sometimes, and I put it down in the trunk and immediately shut it. I'm so mad at myself. I had done it a couple of weeks ago, and it happens a lot,
Yeah.
But it was just, I beat myself up about it, but the day gets over, and today I was like, a lot of people helped me out. I had some friends that came and picked me up and gave me a ride. I had a friend that came and, was a locksmith and got my car, unlocked for me. And today that felt really good to know that there were a bunch of people that were looking out for me, and they genuinely cared, made sure that I had a much better day.
But don't you think that's something you can also kind of laugh at yourself, because it did humble you? Like, it's like, it brought you back to reality, but you can kind of laugh. It's like, oh, my stupid arms, and like, because I do it all the time.
Oh yeah.
Like, sometimes I've said this before, where I'm sitting like on the couch and I'm like, I'm gonna turn on Netflix, and then I'm like, oh, you dumbass, you have to go closer. What are you doing? Why are you sitting way back here? You know damn well you cannot watch the TV from way back here.
Oh yeah. That and that's where I'm at now. Like, it is these little things, and if I'm frustrated at work sometimes, and I'm trying to hold a bunch of stuff while I go down the stairs, and I tend to hold a full mason jar of water in my right hand, and I have to hold it all weird, and then I just spill it, everywhere, and I get all, if I'm in a bad mood, it bothers me. If I'm in a good mood, I'm just like, move on, and but yeah, it's definitely, I still like to laugh at myself. I joke with my friends about things all the time. I was telling a story yesterday about being 12, I remember, and I was at the bottom of a big hill in the neighborhood, probably 500 feet away was a friend of mine. We were yelling, we were talking trash to each other and yelling, kind of could tell maybe who it was or whatever. And I was like, you can't tell who it is from there. And he was like, yeah, I can tell because of your hand, man. It's Justin. And I'm like, damn. And it was one of those moments of like, dude, you stand out, you stand out. And, little moments like that come about, and sometimes it's really funny and clever, and it definitely has moments of,
but it also feels good because
things that people used to say about me are funny to me now that weren't when I was a kid.
But it also probably feels good because that person accepts you for who you are, and they'll make fun of you, but deep down, like, if you showed sadness to them, they would go, oh shit, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that's the beautiful thing that comes from it, because when you find people like that, it's like, oh, okay, like, this is, again, back in high school when you're angry and you just think everyone just doesn't like you, and you're the target. But you find out that there's a lot of really nice people out there and just cool people. And, you know, you don't have to be like overly nice, because I don't even really trust those people. But, you know, there's people that can just fuck with you and just bust your balls and just have fun with it. But you know, deep down, like, they don't mean that. Like, they have their issues too, whether it's a disability or some other issue. They're just messing with you. And at the end of the day, that's how you get through it, by just being dark and goofing around.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I had it as a kid too. There were, you know, I had friends that were, you know, great, that were just, you know, really understanding. And so I could make those jokes when I wanted to, you know, and you had people that were just about it, you know, they crossed. But, you know, now I look back and it's definitely made me a better person. I'd probably be more of an asshole if I definitely hadn't gone through a lot of stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely makes you stronger. You just can't, especially when you're young, because you can't see anything because you're so, you know, consumed with other shit, like, oh, girls, and, you know, you're trying to find an identity in life. But, it's already tough for everybody, and any sort of factor in there just makes it worse. And like you said, like your last name, like anything, like, you know, you have red hair and you're the only kid with red hair in class. Let's like, you know, let's all, you know, just make jokes about that. Or your mom, oh, your mom's sick or something. Let's all make you feel like shit about that, you know? Yeah. My wife said she dealt with that when her mom, you know, had cancer. She's like, oh, you know, oh, your mom has cancer, you know, like horrible things that kids say to each other because they're insecure and they're, you know. Yeah. Yeah, cancel culture doesn't exist in high school. Like, you know, maybe online it does for them, but like, you know, kids say brutal shit. Even if it's in joke, like you say, you and your friends are busting balls, and that to some people on the outside of that little bubble, it's like, oh my God, what did he say? Because I had friends that were different races and stuff, and we would just say horrible shit about each other. But they knew we, you know, didn't mean any of that stuff. It's just busting balls. But people on outside that who were that color or were whatever, they looked at it like, holy shit, what did he say?
Comedy comes from a dark place sometimes. You know, you have to be able to laugh at dark situations, and you know, I think, you know, for me, it you know, I have to be able to laugh at myself and in some regard about it. You know what I mean? Kids used to say, "Oh, you have a dinosaur hand," and you used to make me so mad. But,
right.
You know, it used to be the thing that set me off so much. Now I'm kind of like, you know, you see a little T-Rex thing, and it makes me laugh. I could see where they're, you know, where they came from. You know, with it, and at the time I hated it. You know, I wanted to fight kids, and I did fight them because of stuff like that. But
I mean, you gotta. That's the thing. I mean, I think that's one of the things we struggle with a lot is, like, I don't know about for you, but for me, like, I'm 33 now. I'm tired of fighting, and I don't even mean you. I know you meant physically, but in every way possible. Like, I had to do that. I emotionally have to fight. You know, all that. And there's just days where, like, I wake up and something doesn't go my way, which, you know, I'm used to. I'm not saying I want everything to go my way, but there's just times where, like, I set out for something and I'm just like, can that just go the way I planned it? Because I'm just tired, like, mentally. There's days where, you know, I come home and I'm supposed to do something, wash the dishes, whatever, and I just don't have the energy for it because I've been in my head so long, and I'm just tired of just whatever is going on, that's taking place that day. That I'm just like, I don't want to fight anymore. But I have to, because if I don't fight, then, you know, I probably don't exist, because I have to fight, because that's what a person with a disability does.
Yeah.
But there's days I don't want to.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. That's really, really well said.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, like you said about yesterday for you, like, you know, it's even though it's humbling, on the same token, on the flip side, it's also, it can be demoralizing. It can take you down a peg where you're just like, fuck, really? Like, you know, I'm 36. You're 36, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I'm 36 and I'm still, like, feeling like useless, and I'm still feeling like I can't accomplish the most, you know, basic task. You know, you're trying to, because again, you're still battling. Like, I'm an adult now. I'm you know, I have a life, and I'm still feeling like a kid, or I'm still feeling like I'm insignificant in comparison to everyone else. And it's hard to kind of remember everything you accomplish and everything you do, because you're always in comparison. And again, this isn't just a disability thing. We all compare ourselves to everybody, especially women compare themselves to other women all the time. Guys do it to other guys. But,
Hmm.
you know, we're always, you know, because it's not like we can escape like able-bodied people. They're everywhere. There's way more of them than us. And then there's a lot of people with disabilities that hide it because they're lucky enough they can, in some ways. But you know, like, yeah, we're every day, like we figure like we get older and it's like, well, some of this stuff will just kind of, it won't matter to us. But how can it when life is always going to be challenging?
Yeah, I mean, it's affected big decisions in my life. You know, like I chose not to, you know, have kids and have a baby and go through that whole process because I remember being 17 and 16 years old and watching, you know, a guy pushing a stroller and carrying a baby and he had another kid. And I was like, man, if I have to do that, like, that's going to really suck. Like trying to have to carry a kid and hold a diaper. Like, I remember like it was yesterday and I went deep down this like rabbit hole to the point where my friends were like, dude, what are you doing? That seems like it would just be so overwhelming for me. And it was something that I ended up making sure, you know, like I, you know, met someone who had already had kids and became a stepfather and bypassed that whole, you know, baby stage of having to do, you know, be there and hold somebody and do all the stuff that for me was going to be an absolute anxiety attack to even think about, you know?
Right.
And that's something I never thought, you know, when I was 12, 13, I was like, I'm going to have kids and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to, you know, and then I got a little bit older and realized, you know, for me, that was going to be a little bit more work and even just getting a day job, you know, was tough. Like,
Right. Yeah. Excluding your wife, because you're obviously happy and all that, but like because one thing a lot of people don't talk about with disabilities is dating. Dating can be really brutal for anyone, but
yeah, dating
especially
was
for us.
really, really bad. I mean, it was definitely, you know, it was tough, you know, going to high school and seeing girls laughing at me when I couldn't do push-ups. You know, that was really one of those things. Like, I remember getting angry and like, oh man, now I gotta, you know, try to impress, you know, some girl that I like, and it was really tough. And alcohol really became somewhere I turned to because it was a lot easier to not care. And I drank and became an alcoholic for a long time, probably because of that, or just how much it was easier to be around people, or you went out when you were single, going to the bar and trying to meet somebody. But fortunately, you know, I met Juliet. We've been married for about, we've been together for about 12 years or so, maybe 13, something like that. And, you know, I think she was the first relationship I was in where I actually ever even talked about, you know, I actually had been in relationships with girls where I never, like, try to pretend like I didn't have CP. Like, it just didn't come up, you know, it wasn't in conversation. They knew, you know, but they didn't really know because I just kept it to myself, you know, for the most part. And that probably made those relationships more difficult. And Juliet was somebody who definitely was a lot more understanding from her own personal stuff that she had dealt with in her life. And, yeah, she definitely helped me probably start appreciating myself a little bit more. I definitely went through a really dark phase while we were married of drinking too much and finding a job was hard and just not feeling like I had any worth. I eventually got on disability for about 2 years, and that actually really helped change my life. Because of that, I was able to focus on getting out and being more active. I went from walking with a cane and not being able, you know, bedridden for days because my knees were hurting. This was about 4 years ago. And I finally got on disability for about a year. I couldn't work anymore. I've been working in restaurants and, you know, high service on your feet all day jobs and service industry jobs that were just like I just aged. Like, it just made me like 60. And being on disability got me outside and let me focus on, you know, not having to go to work every day. It was tough. I didn't have a lot of money. We were definitely making sacrifices, but it gave me a chance to get my life back and get a job. And, you know, now I've been at the same job. I work from home, and I've been at that for almost 4 years now, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. One of the things I wanted to ask you, so, because like I said, I do want to talk a little bit about your relationship with your wife, but beforehand, obviously you were in a dark place and you were going through all this. Like, did you believe like that you would, after all the shit that's happened, did you believe like that you would fall in love or anyone would ever accept you fully for who you are?
it was tough, you know. I don't know. I went back and forth. It was one of those things where, like, when I met my wife, I was definitely, I mean, she's got 14 years. She's 14 years older than me. So I'm surprised she stayed with me. I was, you know, in my 20s, but definitely I was in a party stage. And so, I mean, I wanted a relationship at the time, but it was definitely easier to just party and not be sober and be around people who wanted to be buzzed all the time. And, you know, because they weren't really paying attention. I mean, I have friends who I spent a lot of time with when I was 21, 22 years old that didn't know I had CP until I started talking about it on social media 7, 8 years later. You know, never brought it up. I have my best friends, you know, absolutely knew that, closest to me. But I hid it. You know, I definitely got good at hiding it. But, you know, I don't know. That's a good question. I wanted to believe that I would, but there was definitely, it was like, what kind of day is it? Am I having a day where I feel positive, or am I having a day where everything feels like it's not going to work out? But
right, I ask it because I'm single, and it's hard because especially with all this dating apps, and you get kind of lost in all the shit that's going on, and you date so many people, and all the ghosting and all the shit happens. You kind of forget it, like, is love is impossible, and of course how many people treat you differently, and you know, you can go down a road of like fuck women or people or any of that, and you know, it's got to be hard. But for you, like when you started talking to her, meeting her, and obviously, as I said earlier, a lot of times we're consumed with so many of our own problems that we don't know if we're ever going to run into somebody who actually has worse issues, or, you know, a past that's can match ours or close. Mean, she may not have the physical problems that you have.
Yeah, but in my mind, she'd been through worse than I had. You know, she lost a kid to cancer, to brain cancer at 3 years old. That to me is going to be a lot more difficult than having the disability that I have, even though it creates all these issues, you know. And I remember having this conversation with my therapist when this was probably about 7 years ago, and I was in a really bad place. That was when it was probably the worst. And he had just found out that his 17-year-old daughter had cancer, you know, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, you know, here I am telling you my problems, and like, your daughter has cancer. And he's like, well, that's because you've decided that my situation's worse than yours, you know, and you don't know that, you know, it's only yours. All you know is your situation, and, you know, no one's to say that, you know, what I'm going through is by any means worse, and vice versa. And that was something that definitely, you know, kind of hit me a little bit.
Yeah, but that defines you as a person with a disability, because, and this is something I've said on here so many times, but, you know, we're perceived to be the broken people, but we're always the ones that are trying to fix or trying to help others people, because you at that point in time forgot so much about your own thing, and you're now worried about someone else when you really have a real problem to worry about yourself. And that's kind of what makes you obviously special, and you have your own little superpower or whatever people call it, because you give a shit about other people and their problems. Because yes, you have your anger and you have the things that you're frustrated about, but as soon as someone says, hey, I got something wrong with me, you're like, oh shit, what's wrong? And
yeah, absolutely.
That's what kind of makes us so special.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. And I think, like, I mean, you know, for me growing up, I think, you know, I had parents that weren't the most understanding of what other people go through.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was what was kind of hard for them sometimes, was like, they kind of wanted life to just go back to normal. Oh, cool. This kid we thought wasn't going to, you know, be able to walk, and we're going to, like, you know, have to feed him through a tube or, you know, whatever his whole life. Like, he's fine. He's cool. He should be able to go to college and do that and live a great life. And, you know, as I'm getting older, a lot of stuff that goes on outside of me is definitely affecting me way more than anything personally, you know. And the things that are personal now, they don't marinate, you know, situations in the world or seeing friends that I'm close with or people I know going through things is definitely a harder pill to swallow sometimes in my own stuff. And I definitely didn't feel that way when I was when a kid, like, oh, it's just, you know,
do you think like
forever.
Do you think like your past and everything you've been through was made it very easy for you to kind of accept Julia for what she was going through, because you have so much pain.
Yeah.
And, you know, because I believe it's the same for her. Like, you know, if she didn't go through everything she went through, maybe she wouldn't have talked to you. Who knows? I can't say
Yeah.
that.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that's 100%, valid. I mean, it definitely, it shapes you, a lot. It definitely does. Going through anything that maybe a lot of people don't understand, it definitely can make you, open to seeing what other people go through. I mean, I remember being little, even though I was, wrapped up, walking behind my mom and seeing like a kid that was my age in a wheelchair that, couldn't talk and stuff. And feeling that sadness in me of like, well, I'm struggling, like, how do they feel? And I don't have that right to put any sort of assumption on how they may have feel. And I don't know, but that was something for me as a kid. Sometimes it was like, oh man, like, you're not the only person. Like, there's people, that are going through, stuff like you are, or worse.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. They're like, I've seen it many times where I just see someone just really struggling with whatever they're going through, and it's like, it just hits you. Like, you really do forget about what you're going through, and you go like, oh fuck, like,
I want to help. Yeah. What can I do to take this pain away from you? Yeah, no, I definitely understand that.
Even in moments where it's like entertainment, where it's like a movie where you see like some like fat kid, like it's like, oh hey, what up, fat kid, and they're making fun of him. You just go like, oh man, I know what it's like to be that kid. Shit. Yeah. And even though it's entertainment, but it's like, man, I get it. Like, you feel bad. You're like, oh, like, and
yeah, that's
how the anger builds up, and that's, I think I was talking about, it was either your wife or someone else. I was talking about just how easy it is to become something the complete opposite of who you are. Whereas, we talk about all these kids who become school shooters and everything, and it all starts from, I mean, of course, it could start from home and bad parenting and all that, but if we just take that out of it, it can start from just going to school and everyone picking on you, or every girl,
and you're vulnerable, man, at that age,
Yeah, you're trying to do push-ups, and every girl that you find attractive is just laughing at you, and it's like, well, fuck you.
And my friends are all stronger than me, and I remember trying to fight back sometimes and shove, I had friends that were so strong, shove you down, and my dad was physically abusive. So he would hit me, get fired up, and then he would grab my left arm because I couldn't do anything, and then hit me, which was incredibly fucked up. So that was like a constant reminder of like, oh, thanks, I'm not as strong as everybody else.
Right.
Thanks for the reminder.
I don't think I've ever asked this question, but this is something like, when you, and this is like a 2-part thing. So like, when you dream, like when you're sleeping, and then also when you fantasize, like, do you have a disability?
In my dreams, it's interesting. It doesn't, when I was a kid, my dreams were really messed up, and I think maybe partially like things would play out that way from school. But now, as like an adult over the years, like I tell my wife all the time, like, my dreams are just, I feel like life just kind of keeps going, like,
yeah.
But yeah, I feel like I don't. Like, I feel like I'm not usually conscious of it now in dreams. Yeah. And then, I mean, I think I definitely, I have the fantasies every day. I mean, when I was a kid, I'd fantasize like, oh, like when I got trying out for the basketball team in 6th grade, I had friends who were like, dude, you're going to make it, you're going to get picked, and then getting cut right off the bat, and going through that, and the fantasy of like, oh man, I want to just not deal with this, so I can be like everybody else, play basketball, and not be the kid who dribbles with one hand, or whatever. And I found myself doing that now. I compete, with disc golf on a amateur competitive level, and I've won a tournament where I beat 20 people, who none of them had any disabilities, and I won by a lot. Like,
yeah.
I went out there as the only person with a disability, and that felt really good. And when I have bad days, I find myself fantasizing about what it might be like, but it's stupid. It's a waste of time. There's better things that I could be doing. I might as well just do some push-ups then, or something to just not do that, because it's completely pointless. You know what I mean? Unless they're like, hey, we're just coming around with this new technology that fixes absolutely everything. You're going to get your sight back, and you're not going to have CP, and you're not going to have, you're not deaf anymore, and, you don't have, spina bifida, whatever it is, you can walk now. Until we're in that miracle phase, to sit around and think about what it's like. It's definitely a fantasy. But the dream element is interesting because I don't feel like, since I've been an adult, like it doesn't translate over in the dream realm. Like,
yeah, my dreams are fucked
more
up.
Able body.
Yeah, my dreams are fucked up, but I think it's because I take my medication at night. But yeah, I mean, there are dreams that I do have some visual impairment, but a lot of times I don't. But yeah, my fantasies, and I still remember some when I was like in high school and stuff. But yeah, they're always kind of like a setup for failure because I'd always just think about cool shit I could do, and it wasn't ever in like the fantasy. I never like ever talked about or ever even highlighted that I didn't have an eye problem, but it was pretty obvious that I didn't because I was doing things that I couldn't do the way I was doing it in those fantasies. And that's why I asked it, because it's like we all fantasize about doing things that are impossible, but a lot of times it's things that aren't even that impossible for the average person, but for us it's like, oh look, we're doing this. And it sucks because sometimes our dream world or our fantasy world is so much better than our real lives that's what makes our lives so much sadder, because we're so like yes, I'm gonna dunk a ball over this guy and I'm gonna do this, and you're like, I can't fucking do that. Like, I'll be lucky if, I can catch the ball because it's fucking, they throw the ball, I'm probably going to just get hit in the face.
Yep.
And so there's times where, we fantasize so much and we kind of forget that, like, yeah, we have a real life to kind of go through. And then we look at our life as a whole. Like, let's say, New Year's just happened and we analyze our whole life and we go like, what did I do this year? And it's like, we didn't do shit, or at least not enough that what we thought we would do. And so that when we look at our fantasies, we're like, man, like, that was so cool. I did this and did that, even though we made it up. But it's like, I can't do any of that shit, or it's highly unlikely any of this will ever happen. Like, my life sucks. And we just kind of get lost in that. And it's that. And again, that's where the mental health, that's where a lot of that comes into play, where you really have to have a lot of conversations with yourself. You have to, like, it's okay to fantasize. It's okay to it helps you get through the day, but you can't get lost in the amazing things you actually do. Yep. It just doesn't.
I do that a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time in my room fantasizing.
Yeah.
About not having, what about this? It definitely is like I think sometimes it's good. It's definitely okay to, whatever, everybody has that. Everybody has something like, I wish I was skinnier, or I wish I was, more in shape, or I wish I, whatever. People dye their hair every other week because they want it to be a different color. To look at it be brown might just be too much that day,
Yeah.
But we're constantly needing some sort of change. It seems like, even though probably a lot of us don't like change, but the fantasies, it definitely could be a trap.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Yeah,
and I'm guilty of it for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, they are what they are. Especially guys. Guys do it, I think, more than girls. Like, we fantasize all the time I want to be a running back in the NFL. Like, any shit. We fantasize.
I mean, I was convinced I was going to be the first ever, player in the NBA to have, cerebral palsy and have a major disability. Like, that was a legitimate thought in fifth grade. Like, I can do this.
Yeah.
No, you can't. When you hit eighth grade, an eighth grader passing you the ball is too much for you to handle. So you're probably not going to make it, but yeah, you're right. I'm going to, do this. And, I think Hollywood definitely doesn't help, you watch a lot of, especially back in the, day when we were watching stuff in the 90s and stuff like that. Anybody who is blind or deaf or has any sort of disability, like, they really make them look more dumb, and it's more outlandish. And it's like, we watched something recently where they had a blind person. It was really offensive, the way they portrayed it. And, or even if we have people with that's disabled in a movie, but we have it played by an actor, Leonardo DiCaprio is going to have autism in Gilbert Grape, instead of having, maybe trying to find somebody who, might be able to, yes, they're acting, but you got to have people in all environments.
Yeah. You have one, me and your wife talked about, the kid from Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
RJ.
Yeah, right.
Amazing.
The kid from Breaking Bad. Yeah, absolutely. Breaking Bad. And I haven't seen anything for, a while that I think they had the actual deaf girl in one of the movies where
King Kong.
Quiet Place or something like that.
Yeah, there was a girl in King Kong. I believe she's deaf.
Okay.
And she was actually one of the best actors in the whole movie because, boy, there's a lot of actors in that movie that were terrible. Actually, no, it was King Kong versus Godzilla. That's what it was.
Okay.
That's how like they communicated with the monkey was through the deaf girl, which it was nice. But she was one of the only ones that wasn't over the top in that movie. So you just like have to accept, like, it's just cool that you're watching these giant things beat the hell out of each other. But other than that, like the acting itself around it, like it should have been less acting. You should just let these two things kill each other because the people in the movie were just like way too over the top. But yeah, the representation of us is really bad. And the reason I always brought up that kid from Breaking Bad is because, as what you said, when they actually have someone play us, they're always just really slow, or they're just kind of like background. They are the disability friend or whatever they are.
Yeah.
Whereas if they are done well and they are inspiring, we're not playing it. And that's what's
exactly.
really sad. Like,
that's a really valid point. When it's inspiring, it's never done by somebody who has the actual disability.
Yeah.
And it's like, how else are you really going to make that step if you don't have people in that? And it's interesting because like, I make music and stuff like that, and it's something I do for a hobby and whatnot. But if I were to play my music on stage, or the minute I feel like, the way we perceive musicians or actors, like you see this them of having to almost be perfect. That's why, most people that are on, perform on Saturday Night Live on Saturday night, they tend to be attractive and they tend to look a certain way. We're not having, we don't, think about it. We don't have a lot of that in the mainstream music or even film. And we have a long ways to go, I think, until that becomes more of a norm.
Yeah, and the fact that we have like one or two examples, it's like, wow. But it's better than it was, so what are you going to do?
Yep.
I did want to ask you one more question about your wife, only because I wanted to finish that one point. What is it like, because this is something I can't answer, so what is it like to find someone who actually loves you unconditionally and does, like you, I'm sure we all have our insecurities, but you actually are in a world, like you have a bubble with a person who doesn't look at you any differently and you're just her husband. Like, what is it like to feel like actually loved and that you're not disabled? You're just Justin.
It's definitely interesting. It's something I am finally, getting used to. I have a bad habit. She, makes fun of me for it of, if I try to carry something in my right hand and I drop it, and I'm like, and she's like, asking what's wrong. I'm like, I have cerebral palsy. And she's like, oh, do you? Do you have it? Like, I don't know that,
Right.
And it's like, it's definitely made me more confident, I think, like in some regard for sure. Like, she definitely helped me just kind of realize that maybe some stuff was in my head, Granted, there's a majority of people that definitely suck, and you're going to go out there and you're going to see people who, or deal with people who are just going to be, see you as only being the person, who has something that makes you different. And it definitely helped make me more, I guess, like confident. Like going to look for a job after I met her, definitely wasn't as hard. It wasn't something I looked forward to, but it was definitely way harder. And I met her at work. She was she was one of my bosses, and it definitely gave me certain little elements of, confidence and security and whatnot, and that I probably didn't have before.
And it always helps when you have someone to tell your problems to who actually will listen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's your, your home is your safe zone, but it's not even like you're coming home just to be by yourself. You're coming home and someone's just like, oh, hey, what's going on? And you can just talk to them about anything. And, no matter what you say, unless it's like, well, I killed a child or something, like in general, like you can tell them anything and they're going to accept it and they're going to love you for who you are. And they're going to be real with you. They're going to tell you when your shit stinks. They're going to say like, hey, like, I don't know. I don't think you did that right.
It's something that made me a better person and made me grow and make changes that I probably wouldn't have made otherwise. Like, not being a drunk anymore, and not being hateful all the time about stuff when I get in a really bad place, or being grateful that, that there's somebody, that's there and cares for you no matter what, and I'm definitely, grateful for that.
Yeah, and it makes you want to do your part. Like you want to be you're 100%, you're 50% technically of the relationship. You giving 100 is being the best version of you. Obviously, drinking is not going to do it, but you want to
absolutely,
you want to be the best guy you can to her.
Yeah,
because there's not many people that are going to accept you for who you are, especially on that level. Not forget dating, just anyone.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely tough. I remember being stopped one time after leaving the convenience store, and a woman was like, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" And I was like, "Sure." And she goes, "I just saw you in that store," and I was dropping stuff, pulling out your wallet and your money and handing people the debit card. I expect to count money. It was so stupid when I do it, and I was doing that, and I was kind of joking around and being confident. And she was like, "My son, I have a grandson that's like 10, and he's so angry at CP, and he's just so angry." And she's like, "Is there any? How do I get him to be like how confident you are?" And I was like, "Give it time." I mean, I was that way at 10. I was very angry, and I kept my hand in my pocket. You know what I mean? Like, I put my hand in my pocket and try to just keep it there. And sometimes I did it. I remember being like 17 doing that Blockbuster video when I worked there. This woman was like, "Why is your hand in your pocket?" And I was like, "Because I want it to be." She's like, "It's just really weird." And I was just kind of like, "Yeah, it's weird," and kind of went on. But for me at that time, like, I was so insecure about it being out. Like, I really was, like, having to open the video case. Like, and it was certain people. Some people were cool, but I could just feel that coming off of it right off the bat. And, now I'm definitely not that way. And that kind of came from having somebody who was more understanding, for sure.
But that's why you're so important to not only have on here, but just for you to, find ways to get your voice out there and speak, because of that 10-year-old kid who's embarrassed to be who he is. And obviously, what it's like to feel that way. And there's nothing wrong to feel that way, because that's what society tells you should be. And, the world can be cruel. But he doesn't have many people to look up to. As we mentioned, that kid in Breaking Bad, that's one example. But not everybody has to be in Breaking Bad or be in any form of entertainment. We need people like you who are just in a store, normal, doing your own thing, and you're making light of your situation, or you're having fun, and you're making it look fun and easy to have not only cerebral palsy, but a disability. And so she sees that, and it's like, we're always so insecure because we always think everyone's pointing and laughing or looking at us in that way. But she looked at you and said, "Wow, like, I have a son, and you're an example of how great it is to have CP."
Yeah, that's definitely what, I mean, that's my main goal right now. And it's really sad, I think this way, but it's true. And it's like, I really would love to be able to go and, and they call it motivational speaking, but I hate that word. But, being able to go and talk to kids and just say, "Hey, this is what my hand looks like, and this is what I dealt with. And, this is, it's sad that you have to be like accomplished more than just being like, I have a person that lives a regular life. Like, well, are you a motivational speaker, or did you climb Everest with no legs?" Like, that's what we want to come talk to kids about, having a disability, not somebody who just has a regular job that's making it through life. Like, you have to be some, defined, like you said, you almost have to be like a celebrity to motivate, people. You can't just be like, "Hey, I get through my life." And there's people, there's a kid right now that, I was at the park one day this year, and I saw a lady looking at me. Why is this lady looking at me? She's looking at me. And I realized, she had a daughter with her who had CP, just like me, who was probably 10 years old, and she was seeing me laughing with my friends, playing herself, and, and it probably made her feel good, and, to know that, her kid's probably struggling, but, can find that. And that was cool. Like, and I've seen it before. I've been in the store and seen a kid who was just like me, eyeing me, kind of seeing me do my thing and watching. And, I would love to be able to reach out to kids like that and maybe try to help them realize that it will get better as they get older, or, they can just be themselves, like sitting around thinking about, I'm so different and no one understands. Like, it's going to be the case, and that's going to be true sometimes. But I definitely didn't have much as a kid, and I would have loved to have somebody, hey man, I'm just like you, but it's gonna be fine. You know, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. You know, like I remember Jim Abbott. He played baseball for the Angels, and he pitched. And didn't have a left hand or a right hand, and he had to hold the glove in his. Yep, and I had to do the same thing. I pitched and I held the glove, you know, and it was super inspiring me. You know, I wrote a paper on him and everything when I was in fifth grade, and you don't have anybody like that in sports anymore.
Yeah,
you know?
No.
And that was 30 years almost, 25 years ago, more than that.
Yeah, I remember, like, because again, like I'm not so consumed anymore by my own shit. I mean, I am, but I'm not. And I remember when I was still living in Philly, and I saw a girl with no legs, and she was like in this electrical wheelchair. She was just flying down the street, just doing her thing. And the fact that she just wanted to be outside and didn't care that people were looking at her, and she just was doing, she was, you know, being, you know, showing her independence, and she was going to the store. She's just flying through the area and like not giving a shit. And it's like, to me, like, that's very basic to someone, but for most people, but it's like, I thought that was so fucking beautiful and powerful because she just didn't care. And she knew going out, psychologically, she had to prepare herself to go out there with no legs in this wheelchair, and she's going to go buy kids and go buy anyone, you know, and she didn't care. She did. I mean, I'm sure she cared to some degree, but she just was powerful and did her thing, and I was like, good for you. Like, you're awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's why
I love that, you know?
Yeah. I think, and then you have your Instagram. Like, you should maybe do some sort of like lives and blogs of just showing like what you go through, and you know, you just never know what kid is like you that you're gonna reach, and because there's so many people like you, in not just with the same condition, but just people that are struggling with even just you know, somebody may hear this and just go like, yeah, I battle alcoholism, you know, like there's people that are struggling in so many different ways that you might reach one person and they might have been ready to, you know, hang it all up and just check out, but they heard your story and it's like, well, shit, like, all right.
I mean, that's definitely what helped me get to that point. I mean, I have friends who don't even have like any sort of disability. They're in great shape, that were alcoholics. It's just like not overnight, but they failed a bunch, but they got their life together, and like seeing them be sober for a few years and just completely become, you know, go from a person that you're like, dude, you know, you was tough. It's like, wow, you really changed your life and you're so happy, and you fought something like that. I've reached out to people who don't have any disabilities at all, and I've said, dude, you getting sober helped me, you know, change my life and, you know, get sober and not take alcohol as a vice to bury myself in, because I feel like shit sometimes.
Yeah. I think a lot of times we're also looking for that vindication to know that we're like powerful and we're doing something great, but you don't always get it.
Absolutely.
Every so often you get that woman that comes up to you in the store and says, hey, you know, how are you doing this? But I think if we had that every day, obviously life would be so much better, because it's like we feel good about ourselves. Right. But you have to kind of hold on to those, and you can know like you are doing, like you are showing that you're powerful and that you're you know, that you do overcome. And because again, you know, you could just stay at home and drink and not care and just be alone and not give a shit, but you're living a life and you're doing, you know, you're married, you have a family, you're working, you're doing a lot of things that most people would say. I mean, as you said in the very beginning, that your parent, you know, they told your parents that you might not be able to walk or talk or do anything. Yep. You probably would have to just be a person that's been taken care of by your family your whole life. And look at you now. Like, yeah, maybe it doesn't seem like, again, you're back to the fantasies and dreams. Maybe it's not what you dreamt this would be. Maybe you thought you would have a better dream and you would be an athlete or doing all this shit, but okay, that didn't work out. Because when people ask me, you know, what do you want to do with your life? Because I went to school for sports journalism. I found out I really hate writing. It's stupid. So I was like, I just want to help people. And again, that's so damn vague. You can't really, just saying that is like, oh, that's cool. And so I started with like volunteering, helping animals, because I love animals, and I started like
that's how I ended up with all the rescues you have.
Yep. And I started doing like motivational speaking and things like that, and just little things. And then the podcast came, and of course, like, yes, the goal was to kind of get myself out there and tell my story and just help someone here and there. But I never thought I would be able to like actually explore all these different conditions and disabilities and have all these powerful stories out there. And then come to find out, I was like, oh, okay, this is how I help people. I've been saying this my whole life, but I don't know how I was going to accomplish it. And here we are. And yeah, this is not how I dreamt it up would be. And this is not how I didn't think I'd be living in my apartment and still working a factory job. But the more I work at this, the more opportunities I get and more people I meet. And this all can change. It's just, again, it's not what I envisioned. It's not what I pictured it would be. But I know every day I still try to do some good. And I can't say that for most people because you see all the chaotic shit that goes on in this world. And it's putting a little good into this world is something. And you can't say that for most people.
No, and it takes a lot to take those steps. I mean, just to sit down and have take time to have a conversation with somebody, hear their story, stuff like that. Like it definitely is something that people in our situation, should be doing, and that's why I did get frustrated when I kind of first got out there and I wanted to, reach back or connect with people that were, dealing with stuff, and then finding that it was competition, or that some people did just want to talk about connecting, just want to talk about how bad it was, and didn't want to, try to have a positive conversation or talk about ideas how to make things better for people. It's going to take a long time for it to become something that we all openly are aware and conscious of that we work towards.
Yeah. And that's why, at the end, most of the episodes, like, especially like I said to your wife, and I'll say the same thing to you, like, if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm always around. And it's not because I don't have any shit going on. It's just because I know what it's like to feel alone. I know what it's like to be sad. And no matter where you are in your life, like, we're in better places than we were, but we still have our bad days like you did yesterday. And it's always nice to know that there's someone out there that just doesn't give a shit about that stuff and just is like, look, man, I've been there. Like, I'm not going to tell you the hokey, generic things that people say, like, oh, it's going to be okay. Like, yeah, it might be okay, but I also know, it sucks. Like, it sucks when you have days when no matter how old you get and how good of a place you are in life, you always take one step back and just go like, ugh, fuck, life sucks right now. And it's always good to have people around that understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes you appreciate the day.
Yeah. So kind of in closing here, we'll kind of go back to what you said with, that kid, that woman that said she has a daughter, a 10-year-old, and, they were the young version of you. Like, do you have any kind of I don't know, just kind words or just something to kind of help those kids, like to be the younger Justin who's struggling with who he is? And you have anything for someone like that?
Yeah, I've had this thing that I've been telling myself for a while now, and it's been carve your own line, and it's literally just been like etch out your own path. You know what I mean? Don't let anybody else tell you that you're not going to be able to do whatever it is that you want to do. Even if you fail doing whatever it is, if you can enjoy the process of doing something that brings you joy and not letting anybody else tell you otherwise, it definitely helps. And sometimes that's just, maybe it's listening to music, or maybe it's, whatever it is that you connect with, like, be yourself, and it sounds cheesy sometimes to say that, but sometimes the people who are struggling as a kid with being different, like it's easier said than done, but definitely just, whatever it is, if you, the steps that you might take, if you're enjoying the process, even a little bit, that's good to get there. And even if you fail, that's what, I have to tell and that's what helps me a lot. It's just focusing on definitely the things that make me happy and being grateful that I'm able to do those things,
Yeah.
I love messing around on the piano. I'm not incredible at playing piano, but I can do enough with my right hand to where it's fun for me to just do it. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be the greatest piano player ever, but hey, it's, something that I like to do that makes me feel good that I couldn't do at one point in time. So, that's really been for me. It's just been like, definitely make your own path, but definitely be there for other people, because it definitely does help. And that's advice that I need to hear for myself about being there for other people, because, that's definitely where as I get older, what makes me feel better, like with Christmas just coming around, like it feels better as you get older to give gifts than it does to get,
Yeah.
thinking about something for somebody, you know what I mean? Like that's, you know, I think that's what I would say.
No, that's great. Yeah, that's absolutely, you gotta, because I think, I have a little thing I have to do, like a little speech I have to do to some place for like mental health. And, one of the things I say a lot is, when you get into a dark place, or you get sad or you feel alone and all that, like you don't have to look for like the greatest thing ever to change your life. Like sometimes it's just all about getting through that day. And if you're looking forward to the next episode of your show or whatever, it could be something so basic, but it keeps you alive. And
yeah, absolutely.
like it could be anything. It really can be that simple. It doesn't have to be, oh, I'm looking forward to when my family comes to visit, or the girl that I'm going to fall in love with, or whatever. It could just be something like that, where it's just like, I can't wait to the next season of whatever show. And it's like, okay, that's something you're hoping for. It's something it's going to keep you around. Even if you said, well, once the show's over, I'm going to kill myself. Well, you don't know that, because it might not come out. What if the show comes out in a year? Well, you're going to be alive for a year. So much could happen in that time frame. And you might even forget what you said, or you'll just change your perspective on it. And you don't always, like I said, it doesn't always have to be some elaborate thing where you're just like, oh God, this is what's going to keep me alive right now. No, it could be something so simple.
Small things can definitely change your life and make you keep going, and bring a lot more joy than you realize. Yeah, and like it can be that, just something to look forward to, or a spot that you might like to go to. I mean, I like to go sit by this river spot sometimes, and I don't really get to do it very often. And when I do, it's always a nice little reset. I've been going there my whole life. I have memories of friends that passed away that aren't alive, around anymore, that I went there with. And every time I go there, I come back just this spot that's 30 minutes from the house, that I only make 3 times a year. But just going there makes me feel, a lot better about my life. And it's something so small.
Yeah, exactly. I know your wife did, but do you have like anything to like promote? I know I just asked you on, but
right now, follow me on Instagram, airjustin_22. I basically, I consider myself an athlete. I compete in disc golf, but then I also stick to a very kind of intense workout for somebody with CP. So I've really started the process of trying to, it makes me feel better. If I don't do something every day physically, then I just kind of kick my butt. So I made Instagram page to motivate myself to stay active, because I sit early. The more I sit, the worse it can really get on my body. So you can follow me on Instagram, and I definitely talk about what it's like, having a disability, or playing a sport where nobody, you've got people, but you're definitely the minority a lot of the time. But everybody I've met and I have friends through it that have been really great. And that's about what I got going on. I do have a book I have been working on. My wife Juliet is an author at a bookstore, and I'm slowly working on a book that will be out sometime this year. And it's a fiction book. I pull a little bit from my personal experience. It's completely fantastical and falls into a little, definitely fantasy, but one of the characters have CP, because I wanted to be able to kind of, tell a little bit of my story while still making it a fun kind of fictional thing. But it definitely gets the darker side of it, but it's going to have a nice, kind of a little bit happy-ish ending that definitely kind of sheds the reality of the episode. So that'll be out at some point, but I'm definitely working on that.
Well, hopefully it'll line up like when the episode comes out, because I'll put it in the description. And even if the episode comes out before, then I'll just change it later on if it comes out after. Either way.
Yeah, definitely.
But the last thing I was gonna say, like, just keep doing it, because like I know a friend who I've had on here named Joel. He has spina bifida, and he's a power lifter. Like he's got leg braces. Yeah, and I know. The episode I just put out, my friend Paul, like he's totally blind, and he played. There's a blind version of baseball, and there's like a blind version of like soccer. He played all that, and like there,
I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah, there's people that just do crazy shit, and again, I know we're we compare ourselves to people that are fully functional, and we just say like, oh, you know, like, well, I'm not that, but you know, you're still doing things, and you're still, you know, you don't have to do shit. And you know, like I said, you could sit home and just drink, and you don't. You continue to try to push your limitations. And
I definitely could. That's a really valid point, and I've definitely been trying to give myself a little bit more credit because I'm definitely my biggest critic, and you know, and sometimes that's okay because that's what helps get to where I am and make better decisions. Because I mean, I remember being 12, 13, and like, shit, am I just going to be homeless? Like, I'm just going to turn 30 and I'll be homeless.
Exactly. And look at yourself now. It's totally different. Well, this is the first conversation I ever had with you. I think you're an awesome dude. I'm glad that you exist, and I hope you keep doing what you're doing.
I really appreciate it now. Important at the time. I think what you said is absolutely incredible, and I totally agree. You know, that it's definitely.
You sound a little far away from your phone. You might want to come closer.
Oh, sorry. It might be getting a little, but we definitely have conversations like this more often. I think it's something that the world needs for sure. Anytime,
buddy. Yeah, I mean, me and your wife have had multiple conversations. I plan on keeping in touch with her, and same with you. Like, you need anything, just please reach out. And you're having a shitty day, like, trust me, you can text, call me anytime. I'm around.
I will, man. Same here. If you ever need, I put it out there as well. If you ever need anything, definitely don't hesitate to reach out.
I appreciate that. We all need that. Yeah, buddy. We'll keep in touch, and I'll talk to you shortly. And thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, TJ. Have a good night.
You too, brother. Bye. Boop, boop. Oh, I didn't do it. Yeah, guys. There's another one. I know there's kind of some audio technical difficulties. I hope it comes out okay. We'll see. But, yeah, he was great. I enjoyed him. He's just a fun guy who, you know, he's just a guy. That's the thing. Like, I'd like to show the human part of us. Like, you know, you can show all the pain, and you can do all the cutesy stuff too, and life's great and all that. But I just like seeing people who are just show the human side of them, and the humility of what we are and what happens to us. You show every angle so that, you know, there's no stone left unturned. But yeah, I'm starving. I think I'm going to order Chinese food. Bullet was here chilling. Bullet. Oh, okay, so you just want to play and bat stuff around when I'm doing the podcast, but when I'm wrapping up, you don't want to show up. Okay, let's see how this is. This is again my co-host. I don't even know why I keep him as my co-host, because he just doesn't participate whatsoever. Actually, he's more of a saboteur. But anyway, I still love him. He's adorable. I've put out some pictures and videos of his little cat tree put out, which is going to come out so much later. So you've probably seen that many times over. But he's got his own little cat pillow that looks just like him. And he's just great. He's doing wonderful. And he's got so chunky. So yeah, so he's well taken care of. And but yeah, as far as I go, everything's doing okay. And again, I'm gonna go eat because my stomach's been growling. Maybe you heard it on the mic. I don't know, but I'm going to go eat, and you guys are going to go live your life and do something hopefully amazing, or just, there's my stomach growling, or just take a breath of fresh air and just, you know, realize that life can get worse, and, you know, look out for somebody out there. I don't know. I'm just being corny now. But you see you guys on the next episode. Oh, that was the wrong button. That's the right button. All right, guys. Before I fuck it up anymore, see you later.